I received an invitation to my brother's wedding, but my wife was excluded, and now I understand the reason. It was a regular Wednesday evening. Emily and I were in the middle of our usual "what's for dinner" debate. She was craving pizza, while I was leaning toward Chinese. Just as we were about to settle on a compromise, usually pasta, the sound of the mail dropping on the floor grabbed my attention. Among the usual bills and flyers was an elegant white envelope embossed with gold lettering. "Hey, looks like something special," I said to Emily, who was scrolling through her phone on the couch. I tore open the envelope, expecting the usual wedding invite you'd get from family. Sure enough, it was from my brother Ryan and his fiancée, Chloe, inviting me to their wedding in a month. But something was immediately off. It was addressed only to me. No mention of Emily. My first thought was that it was some kind of mistake. I mean, Ryan knows I'm married, and my parents have always been good about including Emily in everything. So, I turned to Emily, trying to sound casual about it. "Looks like Ryan's wedding invite finally arrived," I said, waving the card. But when I saw the look in her eyes as she scanned it, I knew she'd noticed too. "No plus one?" she asked, attempting to hide the hurt. I tried to play it down, offering what I hoped was a reassuring smile. "Probably just a printing error or something," I said, feeling a weird knot forming in my stomach. Emily nodded, but her expression was hard to read, equal parts disappointment and confusion. That night, things were quieter than usual between us. We ended up ordering pizza, but the usual banter was missing. Emily kept glancing at the invitation on the kitchen counter, like it was mocking her. I tried to keep things light, saying, "I'll call Ryan tomorrow, clear it up." She just gave me a tight-lipped smile, but the damage was done. The next day, I called my mom first, thinking she'd know if it was a simple oversight. "Hey, Mom, got Ryan's wedding invite yesterday, but Emily wasn't on it. Was there a mix-up?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. There was a brief pause on the other end, just long enough to make me feel uneasy. "Well, it's not really a mistake," she finally said, her voice carrying a hint of guilt. I felt a jolt of confusion. "Wait, so you knew about this?" She hesitated again, and then it all spilled out. Apparently, Chloe didn't feel comfortable having Emily at the wedding, though no one would give me a clear reason why. My mom kept trying to assure me that it was nothing personal. But how could it not be? Emily had always gotten along well with my family, or at least, that's what I thought. When I told Emily later that evening, her eyes filled with tears. She tried to put on a brave face, but I could see how much it hurt her. "I thought they liked me," she said softly, and her words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't know what to say. I was angry, confused, and a little embarrassed, honestly. I knew I had to get to the bottom of this, so I decided to confront Ryan directly. I wasn't going to let this slide, not when Emily, who had always tried to be part of my family, was suddenly being excluded from one of the most important days of my brother's life. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee in front of me, staring at my phone like it was a ticking time bomb. I needed to make the call to my mom, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the conversation was going to change things. Emily walked in, still in her pajamas, and gave me a small smile. "You gonna call today?" she asked, her voice hopeful but cautious. I nodded. "Yeah, I'll see what's going on." Emily returned to her morning routine, but I could see the way she kept glancing over, as if silently wishing me luck. I took a deep breath and dialed my mom. She answered on the third ring, sounding chipper. "Hey, sweetie, how's everything?" "Hey, Mom, got Ryan's wedding invite yesterday." I started, trying to keep things light. But there's just one thing, it doesn't mention Emily at all." The cheerful tone in my mom's voice seemed to vanish instantly, replaced by a strange hesitation. "Oh, well," she stammered, her words suddenly clumsy. This was not like my mom. Usually, she's the master of smoothing things over, finding the right words for any situation. I could feel the tension through the phone, like an invisible wall between us. "It's not a mistake," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What?" I felt like the ground had just shifted beneath me. "Wait, are you serious? Why isn't Emily invited?" There was a pause, long enough that I thought she might have hung up. But then she let out a sigh. "Look, Ryan and Chloe, they felt it would be better this way," she said, not offering any real explanation. "Better how?" I pressed. "Emily's never done anything to them. What could possibly be so bad that she's excluded from the wedding?" "Chloe's just a bit sensitive about some things that happened last year," she said vaguely. When I pushed for more details, she simply repeated, "It's nothing personal, really. It's just better this way." The conversation left me frustrated and confused, but even more than that, I was angry. I hung up and immediately tried calling Ryan, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted him, but there was no reply. By that point, I felt like I was hitting a brick wall. I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone knew something I didn't. Later that day, I decided to reach out to a couple of close relatives. I called my aunt, who I figured might offer some insight, but her response was just as cryptic. "I think it's best if you just let it be," she said. "Ryan and Chloe have their reasons, and you don't want to make things worse." Every call I made had the same result. It was like there was an unspoken agreement among my family members not to spill the real reason behind Emily's exclusion. Their reluctance made me feel like I'd missed some monumental event that everyone else was privy to. I kept replaying the past few years in my head, trying to figure out what Emily could have possibly said or done to make Chloe feel this way. When Emily asked me what I'd found out, I didn't have much to tell her. "Apparently, it's deliberate," I said, feeling the weight of my words as I spoke them. Her face fell, and she didn't try to hide the pain this time. "I don't understand," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "I've always tried to get along with your family." "I know," I said quietly, feeling utterly helpless. I reached for her hand, but the moment was heavy with uncertainty. I promised her I'd keep digging until I found the truth, but I was starting to realize that whatever had happened was deeper than I'd initially thought. When I sat down with Emily that evening, I felt the heaviness of the whole situation settle in the air between us. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through her phone. I could see the nervous energy in her fidgeting hands and the way she glanced at me expectantly. She was waiting for answers that I didn't really have. I cleared my throat and began to speak, my voice betraying a sense of uncertainty. "So, I talked to my mom again," I said, "and a few other relatives." Emily looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. I could see how much she wanted to hear that it had all been a misunderstanding. But that hope quickly faded as I continued. "It wasn't a mistake. It's deliberate." Her face crumpled in a way I hadn't seen before. Tears welled up, and she tried to blink them away, but one escaped and rolled down her cheek. "But why?" she asked, her voice cracking. "I've always tried to be part of your family, Derek. I thought they liked me." Hearing her say that broke something in me, because she was right. Emily had always gone above and beyond to get along with my family. She'd bake cookies for my mom's birthday, share inside jokes with my dad, and she'd even volunteered to babysit Ryan's young son a few times when he was in a pinch. I thought they appreciated her for it. Apparently, I'd been wrong. I sat down next to her, unsure of how to console her. "I know him. I don't understand it either," I said, feeling the inadequacy of my words. "I've asked everyone I can think of, but no one's giving me a straight answer. It's all so vague." Emily looked down, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. "So it's Chloe then?" "She doesn't want me there," she said flatly, her voice laced with pain. I nodded reluctantly. "That's what Mom said," I admitted, feeling ashamed that I couldn't offer a better explanation. "Apparently, Chloe's uncomfortable because of something that happened last year." Emily stared at me, confused. "Last year? What could she possibly mean?" "I don't remember anything happening." I could see her mentally scanning through every family event, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. I was doing the same, but nothing came to mind. Emily took a deep, shaky breath. "I can't believe your brother would let this happen. I thought we were all good. I've known him since he was a teenager." Her voice was a mixture of disbelief and deep sadness, and it hurt me more than I could express. "I know," I said quietly, reaching for her hand. "But that's why I need to talk to him directly. I need to hear it from him. Maybe he'll have more to say than everyone else." Emily squeezed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong despite her obvious devastation. "Please, Derek, I need to know the truth. I need to understand what I did to deserve this." I nodded, my jaw set with determination. "I'll call him tomorrow. We'll sort this out. I won't let them treat you like this without an explanation." I felt a surge of anger, not just at the situation, but at my family for making Emily feel this way. She didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of whatever mess this was. That night, Emily and I tried to distract ourselves by watching a movie, but it was clear neither of us was truly focused. I kept glancing at her, watching the way she blinked rapidly, trying to stop the tears from falling. I could sense her trying to be strong for me, but the pain was too raw. It was the first time in our marriage that I'd seen Emily feel completely rejected by my family, and I hated it. As we lay in bed that night, Emily turned to me, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think this is going to change things? Between you and your family?" I didn't have an answer for that. I just wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close. "I hope not," I whispered back. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if I believed it. I was determined to get to the bottom of this. The next step was clear. I had to confront Ryan. And this time, I wasn't going to accept any vague answers. Emily deserved better than this, and I was going to fight for her. I messaged Ryan the next morning, asking if we could meet up for drinks. He agreed, suggesting a small pub near his place. As I drove over, I replayed the past few days in my mind. The strange invite, the vague responses from family, and Emily's heartbroken face. I felt a mix of anger and frustration, but also a weird sense of urgency. I needed to hear Ryan's side of the story directly. I wasn't going to let him dodge this. When I arrived, Ryan was already there, nursing a beer at the corner booth. He gave me a half-hearted smile when he saw me, but I could tell he was on edge. I slid into the seat across from him, wasting no time with small talk. "So, what's going on?" I asked bluntly. "Why isn't Emily invited to your wedding?" Ryan's face tightened, and he took a long sip of his drink before answering. "It's not that simple, Derek," he said quietly. "It seems pretty simple to me." I shot back, trying to keep my voice calm but firm. "Emily's not welcome, and no one's giving me a straight answer. What the hell is this really about?" Ryan sighed heavily, looking away for a moment. "Look, Chloe, she's got some issues with Emily," he finally admitted. "She feels like Emily made some harsh comments about us last year, and she just doesn't want any negative energy at the wedding." Harsh comments? I was genuinely stunned. Emily's never been anything but polite, sometimes overly so, just to make sure she didn't step on any toes. "What comments exactly?" I asked, feeling a rush of disbelief and anger. Ryan shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "I don't know the exact words, man. Chloe she felt judged, I guess. It's about that barbecue last summer, you know? You guys were talking, and apparently, Emily said something that rubbed Chloe the wrong way." "The barbecue? That was over a year ago, and I couldn't recall a single negative exchange between Emily and Chloe that day. They talked about wedding plans, laughed about wedding dresses, and even bonded over Pinterest boards." "Are you kidding me? You're excluding my wife from your wedding over something she supposedly said over a year ago?" I asked incredulously. Ryan's shoulders slumped. "I know it sounds ridiculous," he admitted, "but Chloe's really set on this. She's been upset for a while, and I didn't realize how deeply it bothered her until we started planning the guest list." I leaned forward, my frustration boiling over. "Ryan, this is your wedding. Do you even believe Emily said something that bad? Do you think she's really of negative energy?" He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. "Honestly, no, I don't think Emily meant anything by it," he confessed. "But Chloe's convinced it was more than just a casual comment. And you know how it is, Derek. I have to support her. It's her day, too." "Yeah, but it's also supposed to be our family," I countered, feeling the sting of betrayal. "Emily is part of that family, and you're choosing to keep her out over some vague accusation. This isn't fair to her, or to me." Ryan looked genuinely torn, guilt etched across his face. "I know, man. I really do," he said, his voice thick with regret. "But I can't just override Chloe's feelings. We've been arguing about this for weeks. She thinks this is the right call, and I guess I don't know what else to do." I couldn't help but feel conflicted. On one hand, I understood Ryan's need to back up his fiancée. But on the other hand, he was my brother, and I expected more loyalty from him. Emily wasn't some distant acquaintance. She was my wife, and she'd always tried to fit into our family, no matter how awkward or uncomfortable it sometimes was for her. She didn't deserve to be treated like this, and I felt compelled to defend her. "Ryan, you're my brother," I said, my voice low but steady. "I want to be there for you on your wedding day. But I can't show up knowing Emily's been deliberately left out. It's not right." Ryan nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and helplessness. "I get it," he said quietly. "I really do. But I can't change Chloe's mind. I wish I could, but..." The unfinished sentence hung in the air, an echo of everything that remained unresolved between us. I stood up, suddenly feeling the need to leave. "If you change your mind, let me know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I'm not going without Emily." As I walked out of the bar, I felt more conflicted than ever. Part of me wanted to make things right with Ryan, to somehow find a compromise. But another part of me was deeply hurt by his willingness to let Chloe's vague grievances dictate such an important event. I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't face Emily if I'd back down. And I wasn't going to let this go without a fight. The weeks that followed my conversation with Ryan were an absolute whirlwind of calls, texts, and confrontations. It was like the entire family was trying to pull me back in, hoping I'd cave and show up at the wedding, even if it meant leaving Emily at home. "Derek, you have to understand," my mom pleaded one evening over the phone. "It's Ryan's wedding, and he needs you there." I get that, Mom, I said, my frustration evident. But I can't just leave Emily behind like she doesn't matter. Oh, stop being so dramatic, she countered. It's not about her not matching. It's about avoiding unnecessary drama on such a big day. Chloe's trying to keep the peace. By creating more drama, I shot back, feeling the anger rise. By excluding my wife for something she didn't even do. Derek, she sighed, her voice growing stern. You're putting your marriage before your family obligations. I paused for a moment, feeling a mix of anger and clarity. Well, yeah, that's kind of the point, I finally said. Emily is my family now. And if you can't see why that's important, then I don't know what else to say. My dad tried a different approach. Son, you're making this into a bigger deal than it needs to be, he insisted one afternoon, his voice tinged with irritation. You've got to be there for your brother. He's the only one you've got. And Emily's the only wife I've got, I replied, feeling more and more resolute. I can't just abandon her to avoid a bit of family tension. He let out a heavy sigh. You're choosing her over us? I'm not choosing her over you, I said firmly. I'm choosing what's right. You're asking me to support something that's unfair and hurtful. I won't do it. Ryan's texts were filled with a mix of guilt and pressure. Chloe's still upset, but I need you there, man, one read. It's not the same without my brother. I sat staring at the message for a long time, torn between my loyalty to my brother and my duty to Emily. But my gut was clear on this one. If Emily wasn't welcome, I wasn't going either. I explained my decision to Emily one night after dinner. I'm not going to the wedding, I told her simply. I won't support something that disrespects you. Her eyes widened, a mix of surprise and gratitude. Are you sure? She asked softly, like she couldn't quite believe it. Yeah, I said, taking her hands in mine. I can't leave you out like that. It's not right. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they weren't from hurt. Thank you, she whispered, squeezing my hands. I know how hard this is for you. And I'd always been close to Ryan, and the thought of missing his wedding tore at me. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about me or Emily. This was about standing up against something unfair, even if it came from my own family. When I shared my decision with my parents, they were livid. You're overreacting, my mom snapped. It's one day. Emily can handle it. Maybe she can, I said, feeling a strange calm settle over me. But I can't. I won't attend a wedding that makes her feel less than welcome. The whole family seemed to be choosing sides now. Some of my cousins supported my decision, saying it was admirable that I was standing by my wife. But others saw it differently, accusing me of letting my marriage drive a wedge into our family dynamics. The constant back and forth of arguments, guilt trips, and emotional manipulation was exhausting. Every phone call left me drained. Every family gathering turned into a lecture about loyalty. My mom even tried one last desperate tactic. What if I talk to Chloe? She suggested. Maybe I can get her to change her mind. Just this once. Mom, that's not how this works, I said, shaking my head. It's not about squeezing Emily in at the last minute. It's about the fact that she wasn't wanted in the first place. By the time the wedding day rolled around, I felt like I'd been through an emotional battlefield. Emily and I spent the day at home, just the two of us. We tried to keep things light, watching movies, ordering our favorite takeout, but there was a heavy sense of what was happening without us. Ryan was getting married, and I wasn't there. That evening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ryan. I wish things had gone differently. I didn't respond. What was there to say? The morning of the wedding was quiet, almost eerily so. I woke up feeling a mix of dread and relief. While part of me was grateful that I wouldn't be facing the awkward tension of the event, there was still a hollow ache that I couldn't shake off. Emily sensed it too. She tried to be cheerful, suggesting we spend the day doing everything we loved. Maybe we can try that new Thai place, she offered, her smile genuine, but her eyes still reflecting a hint of sadness. Sounds good, I said, forcing a smile back. We can have a non-wedding celebration. Emily laughed softly at the attempt, and for a moment, things felt a little lighter. We spent the afternoon watching comedy movies, trying to keep the mood up. The sound of laughter was a strange mix of comfort and longing. It felt good, but at the same time, it was a reminder of the celebration happening without us. By late afternoon, Emily seemed to be distracted, her eyes distant as she stared at the TV screen. Do you think we'll ever be able to fix this? She asked quietly, breaking the silence. I didn't have a good answer. I hope so, I said, squeezing her hand. But I don't regret standing by you. No matter what happens. She nodded, tears welling up. I know, and I'm grateful. But I hate that it came to this. We ordered takeout from the new Thai place. opting for dishes we'd never tried before in a bid to make the day feel special. We clinked our glasses together, sharing a quiet toast to each other. But as we ate, I couldn't shake the feeling of what I'd left behind. Ryan, our bond, our childhood memories, now overshadowed by this unresolved tension. As the night wore on, we tried to focus on our non-wedding day. But it was clear that Emily was struggling with guilt, and so was I. Every now and then, I caught her giving me a sad smile, the kind that said, "Thank you, but I wish this wasn't happening." I felt a pang of guilt every time I saw it. I kept wondering if I had made things worse by taking a stand. Maybe I should have tried harder to negotiate some middle ground, to at least be there for Ryan. But then I remembered Emily's devastated face when she found out she wasn't invited, and I knew I couldn't have chosen differently. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. I hesitated for a moment before opening the message, unsure if I was ready to face what he had to say. The message was short, but filled with a sense of regret. "I missed you today." I stared at it, feeling a lump form in my throat. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to tell him I missed being there too, but I couldn't bring myself to type it out. I was still too raw, too angry about how everything had played out. The next morning, as we were making coffee, another message from Ryan popped up on my phone. This one was different. It simply read, "It was never really about Emily, you know?" I read it twice, trying to make sense of the words. My heart sank, and a new wave of confusion washed over me. What did he mean by that? If it wasn't about Emily, then what was all of this really about? I felt a surge of anger mixed with curiosity. I immediately texted back, "What are you talking about? If it wasn't about Emily, then what was it?" His response came quickly. "It's complicated, Derek. Just know that Chloe had her reasons. I'll explain someday." I sat there, phone in hand, feeling a swirl of emotions, anger, sadness, frustration, and a bit of betrayal. If this wasn't entirely about Emily, then what the hell had I been fighting for? Why had I stood my ground so firmly, causing a rift with my family? But before I could send another message, I caught myself. I was too exhausted to chase answers that Ryan clearly wasn't ready to give. I looked at Emily, who was pouring coffee, trying to pretend she wasn't listening. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice cautious. "Ryan texted me," I said, setting the phone down. "He said it wasn't really about you." Emily's brow furrowed in confusion. "Then what was it about?" "I don't know," I admitted. "And right now, I'm too drained to care." She nodded slowly, but I could see that she was just as baffled as I was. The unresolved questions hung in the air, making everything feel even heavier than before. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever the real reason was, it had torn my family apart, and it wasn't going to be fixed anytime soon. Months had passed since the wedding, but the wound still felt fresh. Emily and I had settled back into our routine, but there was a lingering sense of loss, like a piece of our lives had been taken away and wasn't coming back anytime soon. We tried not to dwell on it, but there were moments like family updates on social media or casual mentions of Ryan's wedding from friends that brought back the sting. It was a quiet Wednesday evening when my phone buzzed unexpectedly. I glanced at the screen and saw Ryan's name. I hesitated before picking up. "Hey," I said, unsure of what was coming next. "Hey, Derek," he replied, his voice hesitant. "Listen, I think it's time we talk. Can we meet up somewhere?" I agreed to meet at the same pub where we'd had our last conversation, the one that had ended with more questions than answers. As I approached the booth, I saw Ryan already seated, nursing a beer. He looked different, somehow more tired and worn down than the last time I'd seen him. "I wanted to clear the air," he started, looking genuinely remorseful. "I know things got really messed up, and I owe you an explanation." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. "Chloe was well. She was sensitive about something that happened at the barbecue last year," he admitted. "Apparently, Emily made a joke about how fast we got engaged, and Chloe took it the wrong way." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "That's it? A joke about the engagement speed?" Ryan nodded, looking embarrassed. "Yeah, I know it sounds ridiculous." Chloe felt judged, like maybe Emily thought we were rushing into things. But it wasn't even a serious comment. It was just one of those offhand things, you know? The realization hit me like a punch. Emily's offhand comment was nothing more than a throwaway joke, and yet it had spiraled into this mess. "I can't believe that's what all of this was about," I said, my voice filled with disbelief. "Why didn't you just tell me from the start?" "I should have," Ryan admitted, looking genuinely remorseful. "I should have stood up for you guys." But Chloe was adamant, and I thought I was doing the right thing by supporting her. I felt a mix of relief and anger bubbling up inside me. Relief because finally there was some clarity. Anger because this entire mess, the months of tension, the family rift, the painful exclusion of Emily, had all been over a simple misunderstanding that could have been easily cleared up. Do you understand how much damage this has done? I asked, my voice low but firm. You let a minor misunderstanding turn into a major conflict, Ryan. You should have had my back. Ryan's eyes dropped to the table. I know. I messed up, Derek. I should have tried harder to resolve it. And that was the apology I'd been waiting for, at least from him. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I felt a small sense of vindication, but it was quickly overshadowed by a deeper sadness. But what about Chloe? I asked, shifting the focus. Does she feel any differently now? Is she willing to make things right with Emily? Ryan's face tightened, and I knew the answer before he even spoke. No, she's not, he admitted, his voice filled with frustration. She still feels like keeping Emily out was the right decision for her peace of mind. My jaw clenched at his words. Her peace of mind? The phrase felt absurd considering the fallout that had ensued. So, she still thinks excluding Emily was necessary. Yeah, Ryan said reluctantly. She's standing by it. Even now, she doesn't think Emily meant to be malicious, but she insists that the wedding day was about her feeling completely comfortable, no matter what. I felt a surge of anger, but it was dulled by months of exhaustion. I'd spent too much time being upset, and now I was just tired. Well, I guess that's that then, I said, feeling a strange sense of resignation. If she's not willing to make amends, I don't know how we move forward. Ryan nodded slowly, looking pained. I get it. I wish I could fix this, Derek, but it's more complicated than I thought. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what had happened settling between us. The conversation was bittersweet. Ryan's apology brought a sense of closure, but it also confirmed that Chloe had no intention of repairing the damage. It felt like a half apology, like I'd gotten back a piece of my brother, but lost something much bigger in the process. As we left the bar, Ryan stopped me just before I reached my car. For what it's worth, I really am sorry, he said, his voice sincere. I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions that I couldn't fully articulate. I know you are, I replied. But it's going to take time, Ryan. For both of us. I drove home that night feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. When I walked through the door, Emily was sitting on the couch, reading a book. She looked up, searching my face for clues about the meeting. How did it go? She asked cautiously. It went okay, I said, sitting next to her. Ryan admitted that Chloe took something you said the wrong way at that barbecue. He apologized, but Chloe's not budging. Emily's face softened, and she let out a sad sigh. I'm glad he apologized at least. But I guess that's all we can expect right now. I nodded, feeling a sense of grim acceptance. The road to fully healing this rift was still unclear, but at least we had some answers now, even if they weren't the ones we'd hoped for. The aftermath of Ryan and Chloe's wedding was a slow, drawn-out reality that settled over me like a heavy fog. It wasn't just the hurt or the anger anymore. It was the sense of permanent change. The initial shock had faded, leaving behind a strange, hollow feeling. Emily and I talked about it less and less, but the impact was still there, simmering beneath the surface. Over the next few months, I made some effort to rebuild my relationship with Ryan. We grabbed coffee a few times, and our conversations, while polite, always had an undercurrent of discomfort, an unspoken awareness of everything that had happened. The topic of Chloe, or the wedding, never came up. It was as if we both agreed, silently, that we couldn't rehash it without risking another argument. It was easier to focus on superficial topics, work, sports, the latest movies. But I couldn't deny that there was a lingering tension, like a hairline fracture that had never fully healed. Family gatherings were the most awkward part. Birthdays, holidays, or even casual dinners at my parents' place. Each event felt like a careful dance around the elephant in the room. Emily and I would show up, do our best to be cordial, but there was always that sense of unease. My parents, still hopeful for reconciliation, often made strained attempts to normalize things. It's nice to have the whole family together, my mom would say, her smile too tight, her eyes darting between me and Ryan. Emily, to her credit, remained graceful through it all. She made an effort to participate in conversations, brought homemade desserts to family events, and never once complained about the lingering tension. But I could see it wearing on her, the cautious smiles, the calculated words. She was trying to fit in, but the warmth was gone. I caught her glancing down during family meals, probably remembering how it felt to be deliberately excluded from the wedding. At home, things were different. Emily and I became closer in a way we hadn't been before. There was a deeper sense of solidarity, a stronger bond formed in the midst of the chaos. We started talking about our future more seriously, about having kids, maybe buying a new house in a quieter neighborhood. It felt good to focus on something positive, something that was just ours. One night, as we were sitting on the porch with glasses of wine, Emily turned to me, her voice soft. Do you think things will ever really go back to how they were with your family? I took a moment before answering, knowing how much weight that question carried. Honestly, I don't know, I admitted. But I do know that whatever happens, we're okay. We've got each other, and that's what matters most. She nodded slowly, a small smile breaking through. You really mean that, don't you? Yeah, I do, I said. This whole mess taught me something. I promise to stand by you, no matter what. I'm in it. The words felt heavy, but they were true. I had learned something crucial through all of this. Family can be complicated, messy, and imperfect. But when it came down to it, Emily was the one I had chosen to build my life with. She was the person I had vowed to support, even when things got tough. And I realized that sometimes standing by your partner means accepting that not everyone else will agree with your choices. The rift with my family wasn't completely healed, and maybe it never would be. But I knew where my priorities lay. Ryan's apology had been a step toward reconciliation, but Chloe's continued stance had made it clear that some bridges might never fully mend. And that was okay, I decided. If it meant keeping the peace at home and maintaining my integrity, a little distance from my family was a price I was willing to pay. I still loved them, of course, but I was done bending over backward to fit into a narrative that had no place for Emily. As the months passed, life gradually shifted into a new normal. We started focusing more on the things that brought us joy. Planning weekend getaways, experimenting with new recipes, even discussing baby names on lazy Sunday mornings. I realized that while I couldn't control how my family felt or acted, I could control how I responded. The experience had left its mark, but it had also clarified one important thing. At the end of the day, my loyalty belonged to Emily. The family you create with your partner is the one that deserves your unwavering commitment, even if it means redefining your relationship with the one you were born into. It was a hard lesson, but one I wouldn't trade. Because despite everything, I felt stronger, more certain of my choices. And as I looked at Emily that evening, watching her laugh over a silly joke, I knew I'd made the right one. Just when it seemed like the dust had finally settled, a new twist threw everything back into chaos. It was a Sunday afternoon when I got a call from my cousin Sarah. We hadn't spoken much since the wedding drama, so I was surprised to see her name pop up on my screen. Hey Derek, she started, her tone cautious. I just heard something and I think you need to know. My heart sank. I'd had enough surprises for 1 year. What is it now? I asked, already bracing myself for whatever was coming next. It's about Chloe, she said slowly. Apparently, she's been having second thoughts about the marriage. I nearly dropped the phone. Wait, what? Why? Sarah hesitated, then lowered her voice as if someone might overhear. Well, she's been arguing with Ryan a lot lately. She's upset that he didn't cut ties with you completely after the wedding fiasco. She expected him to fully support her by distancing himself from you and Emily. When he didn't, it made her reconsider everything. I was stunned. You're telling me that this whole thing isn't just about Emily's so-called comment? Sarah sighed. It seems like Chloe's need for control runs deeper than any of us realized. She wants absolute loyalty, even if it means alienating family. A mix of disbelief and anger surged through me. All this time, I'd been dealing with the fallout of Chloe's grudge, and now it seemed like the rift she created was starting to backfire on our own relationship. Is Ryan okay? I asked, more concerned than I expected to be. Honestly, I don't know, Sarah admitted. He's caught in the middle, and I think he's realizing the consequences of siding with Chloe. It's not just you who's hurt, Derek. It's him too. For the first time since this mess began, I felt a strange sense of pity for Ryan. He had tried to appease Chloe, tried to keep his marriage on track, but it had come at a cost. And now, it seemed like even that wasn't enough for her. That evening, I couldn't get the conversation out of my head. I told Emily about it, unsure of how she'd react. Chloe's considering leaving Ryan over this, I said carefully. Emily's face registered a mix of surprise and sadness. That's shocking, she said, her voice soft. But also kind of expected, isn't it? She never seemed like the type to compromise. Yeah, I agreed. But I never thought it would get this bad. I figured things would settle down eventually. Emily shook her head thoughtfully. People like Chloe don't settle. They expect the world to bend to them. When it doesn't, they break things apart. Over the next few weeks, I heard bits and pieces of the escalating situation. Ryan tried to reach out, but his messages were brief and lacked their usual warmth. Going through some stuff, he texted one day. Can we catch up soon? I felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to rush to his side, to offer support as a brother should. But the other part of me, the one still angry and hurt, was hesitant. Ryan's choices had hurt me deeply, and now he was facing the consequences of those decisions. Could I really just set it all aside and pretend everything was fine? We eventually met up for coffee, and Ryan looked worn down, the weight of recent events clear in his tired eyes. Chloe's still upset, he confessed. She thinks I should have completely cut you off. But I couldn't do that, Derek. You're my brother. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. His words were what I'd been wanting to hear for months, but now they came with a sense of regret. I never wanted you to have to choose, I said quietly. I just wanted fairness for Emily. I wanted her to be treated like part of the family. I know, Ryan said, his voice thick with guilt. And I'm sorry. I tried to make things right, but it just kept getting worse. It was clear that Chloe's demands had put immense pressure on him, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. Ryan, you don't have to keep apologizing. But you do need to figure out what you want in your marriage, I told him honestly. If you're constantly choosing between Chloe's expectations and your own values, it's never going to work. Ryan nodded slowly, as if he were hearing the truth for the first time. I know, he repeated, more to himself than to me. As I drove home that evening, I realized that this whole saga wasn't just about loyalty or misunderstandings. It was about the dynamics of control and compromise in relationships. Chloe's desire for complete control had not only strained her relationship with me and Emily, but it was now threatening to unravel her marriage with Ryan. When I got home, Emily was waiting for me, a mix of concern and curiosity in her eyes. How did it go? She asked. I sighed, feeling the weight of everything settle in. Ryan's struggling. Chloe wants him to choose, and he doesn't know if he can. Emily nodded, her expression pensive. Maybe this whole thing wasn't just about us then, she said quietly. Maybe it's about something bigger in their relationship. Maybe, I agreed, but that's a story for another day. For now, I was focused on what I'd learned. That loyalty isn't just about who you're standing by, but also about standing by what's right, even when it's hard. And sometimes, that means accepting that not every story will have a neat, happy ending.